welcome to another Cafecito conversation. And I am just blessed to be with Belen McDaniel today. And we're going to have a cafecito together. We have our coffee mugs here, and we'll be talking about the Latinx Mosaic affinity group, and also just the importance of those affinity groups at Azusa Pacific University. So Belen, welcome. Introduce yourself for us today.
Okay, my name is Belen McDaniel. I am the program manager in the Department of Public Health. I'm also adjunct faculty for the Department of Criminal Justice, and I teach first year seminar for all the CJ majors every fall. I have been doing that for since 2017. So I have both staff and adjunct faculty role here at APU.
Wonderful. Well, and you have a role in the Latinx Faculty, Staff, and Administrator Mosaic Association. So let's start there. Tell us about what brought you to that particular affinity group, and frankly, why these groups are so important at Azusa Pacific.
Yeah. Well, one, I was very excited when I saw that the Latinx Mosaic Affinity Group. We have a really long acronym name, but the point was, for me, I'm like in the middle when it comes to extrovert and introvert, and so it was just one of those things like people, my people, community. I want in. I say yes, and for me, I like to say yes to a lot of things. So it's always about, okay, well, what are my priorities? What do I have capacity and time for? Because I also have responsibility in my top 5 strengths. So if I say yes, it's a 100% yes. I want to show that commitment. So for me, that was a group that I felt like I could say yes to. And it falls into one of my priorities, and diversity, inclusion, and equity. That is an area that I know God can continue to use me. It's an area of passion. I'm not an expert in that, but it is an area that I continue to grow in and learn in. And within my sphere of influence, being an adjunct faculty teaching freshmen, young adults, where they're at their APU journey, and then also with the other staff, my colleagues, my peers, my coworkers, the faculty that I get to welcome, because we're more on the baby side of department, so we're growing, and every year we have new people joining our department. And how do I continue to be a reflection within my sphere of influence? That's like for me really important. And I know that APU is a Hispanic serving institution, and I'm APU alum. So when I was at APU in undergrad, the demographics have changed significantly. And just teaching my first year seminar class, I can speak for criminal justice. It is largely students of color in my class, and majority of my students are Hispanic. And so for me, this is one way that I can show them that this is a priority, and I'm there to serve them and support them. And I'm a safe person to go to. And that group is a way for me to continue to collaborate, to be a part of a group of faculty and staff and administrators who are saying yes and showing students, as well as all of the employees at APU, this is a priority for us.
Yes. So you mentioned that initial excitement about being part of the Latinx community, one. Yes. Yes. Having that intersect with your own circle of influence, and frankly, why it's so important. So what would you tell members of the community who may not have heard of our affinity organizations and who might think, well, wait a minute, they're separating themselves from the main organization. How come you even need an affinity group? What would you tell our colleagues?
Okay, one of the things that intrigued me, obviously, is the fellowship, the community. I consider myself multiracial, multi-ethnic, but I largely identify with my Hispanic roots. being largely Mexican American, and it's nice to have fellowship with people who come from a culture and an understanding. I lean more towards a collectivist view, and seeing life and doing things in community versus an individualistic framework. Both have value in it, but it's nice to be able to connect with people who have similar experiences, understanding of that culture. But besides that, we're able to also, because APU is Hispanic Serving Institution, I mean, that in itself should tell us that every person who works for APU, this is a priority. What are we doing to show our students we understand, and not just, oh, you're welcome at APU, but we're serving you well. What can anybody, whether you're Hispanic or not, show our students, largely our students of color, and a huge percentage of our students are Hispanic, Latinx, that we are prioritizing diversity, inclusion, and equity, strategic initiatives, steps in our day-to-day, in our actions, and how we serve them, and then also at our highest points of leadership as well in our decisions.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yay. So you mentioned, I'll call it a bridge right now, that as an adjunct faculty, as an example, you're working with students, and you saw participation in the Latinx Mosaic Association as not only modeling, but then supporting a school which is HSI. So how might the Latinx Association, or our Asian Mosaic Association, or our Black Faculty Staff Administrator Association, how might we intentionally bridge to student support, not only in our modeling, but you mentioned in actions? What might that look like?
Okay. Well, one, we're better together, right? And so we have these affinity groups, but also we have this larger Mosaic group where we all kind of come together, and we're like, what are you doing? What are your students and your fellow staff and faculty sharing our concerns? What are priorities for you? How does that align with the overall mission of APU? We know what our mission is. We know we are here to serve students, and again, if we could have unlimited time and resources, we would do it all, but we can't. How within our vision for the renewal that we have within our fiscal year, within an academic year, what are we identifying as priority amongst our groups? What are we identifying as each group recommending, okay, these are priorities that we want to align well with the overall vision, strategic priorities, the mission of APU, that we can actually put our time, our resources, our attention to. And so a tangible way of how we do this is we support what our student groups are already doing. We have wonderful student leaders, and so they're already championing these awesome things. I still remember when I was a freshman at APU, the Hispanic Heritage Month coffee house, that still happened. Like the fact that that's still happening, that makes my heart very happy. And so how do we continue to support our ethnic student organizations and what they've identified our priorities versus stretching our time and resources, but rather teaming up, collaborating to make them better, to make them stronger, and to also just show our students that we're here, we're supporting you on your journey, not just an academic journey, but we care about you holistically. So I digress.
So we're stronger when we collaborate, and we are actually modeling, once again, that word, to the students that they are a priority.
Yes.
And so I'll shift gears a little bit on you, because since you went to APU to put on your student hat momentarily, and you have a unique insight because of your student experience. Yeah. So if you were a new student now, what would you see at APU that has changed for the better? And what do we still need to do in the future for your support as a Latina at APU?
Okay. Wow. Um, you know, my freshman year, first semester at AP was really hard. It was a culture shock. I had always checked off that box that I was a minority, but I didn't feel it until I came to APU. That was a long time ago. Um, so it is comforting seeing the student demographics and just being more representative of our country, how diverse our country is. So that's really nice. And then also in my classroom, I have a pretty diverse group of students as well from so many different backgrounds. So I get to reiterate that in my class of, hey, I'm alum, and things have in the demographics, I think are a beautiful thing, representative of not just our country, but God's creation, God's children. And so for me, the area of improvement that I feel like we can continue working towards would still be in hiring faculty and staff of color, that it's not just certain departments that or offices or centers that, oh, well, it's only these offices where you'll see faculty and staff or administrators of color. I think we can definitely continue to do good work towards that. And as well as finding more opportunities to continue to train and educate every person who works for APU in the area of diversity, inclusion, and equity, and really how that aligns with, because we're a Christian university, we will not compromise on the fact that we are a God-first institution. And so it is really hard navigating this because we have these passions, these areas of injustice that we see in our day-to-day, but what is centering us in our workday? And that is, who does Jesus call us to be? But how do we continue to show that love towards our neighbors who are experiencing the things that they're experiencing? I'm fatigued. I'm like, just coming here today, I'm had to mentally prepare myself to be present, and I'm tired. I want to pause, but at the same time, trying to rest and get ready for action, and saying yes to the next student I encounter, to my coworkers within my department, and still being present and how God can continue to use me. Anyways, yes, we still have a lot of work to do, but APU has done a lot already. I mean, I can attest to that. It's a beautiful thing to see the growth. One big thing I'm really proud of that didn't exist when I was at APU is the first generation college student program, Gen 1 scholars. The fact that there's a TRIO student support services. These are things that weren't there that are here now. And so I'm always like every fall telling my students, these are ways to get plugged in if you are eligible. And I promote as many things as I can so my students feel connected sooner rather than later, especially in those first 5 weeks of their very first semester. Those are critical weeks. Yes. So I mean, APU's done some wonderful work, and we have a mission, and until the day Christ Jesus returns, it will not be complete. So we have a lot to do, but it's beautiful.
Beautiful, Belen. Well, you mentioned the calling, if you will, to action, and why it's so important to support each other in community. I know that you're a diversity ambassador. And so how has a program like Diversity Ambassadors equipped you for those type of actions and to see the world through new eyes at APU for those actions to take place?
So how have I been equipped through a new lens, ready to say yes to action? I mean, my mom always told me that you can't take your degrees to heaven, right? It doesn't matter how credentialed one is. It doesn't matter. God is still is at work. He is always at work. He is always in control. And there's beauty in that, but at the same time, horizontally, we have this vertical relationship with our relationship with God, and knowing that He loves us. He loves us. But do our brothers and sisters know that truth? And so taking part in the diversity ambassador program, learning about the cultural proficiency continuum, being given language, being given examples, learning, being vulnerable, having difficult conversations with my colleagues, with my coworkers, that is pivotal work. It's important work because we said yes to working here at APU, and there's just tangible ways we can do that. One of the big things is also having that leadership support too. And I will brag about my wonderful department chairs I work under, because they're two fantastic, fabulous women. I love them so much. And I'm very thankful that I have such wonderful support in the Department of Criminal Justice and Public Health. And that if I have an idea and I feel like, oh, I'm going to go this way with the curriculum, or I feel like we can serve our students well in this area with it covering, it falls in line with our DEI priorities, they say yes. They allow me, they champion, they empower me to go forth and do it. And I'm very thankful that I have really supportive leadership, immediate leadership to do that. And again, the more all of our faculty, staff, administrators can ask ourselves every day, how is God using us? How are we continuing to champion, empower, and reassure people that Jesus loves them through just tangible means? We're each created by God with these unique skills and abilities to do certain things that only we, I, Belen, you, Richard, there's only certain people you can reach, and there's only certain people I can reach. That God, these are opportunities. And anyways, I would encourage anybody who feels like, well, everyone should feel called to action, but to continue to pray on that, to speak to your leadership, and connect with your colleagues of what are those tangible ways God can continue to use you in this area of diversity, inclusion, and equity.
Thank you. So it's a real community, a real collaboration, and a real calling. And Belen, you have modeled that for us in Ambassadors and on your walk with us since. Thank you for being part of that, living your faith. You mentioned, the vertical and horizontal, and you model that commitment to us as well. So thank you so much for this time in our Cafecito conversation. And we look forward to more times with you in the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much.